speaking of things that are calming, not this.
No.
This is very stressful.
Yeah.
But Dan, look at this.
Yeah.
We've got a camera.
Uh-huh.
Hello. You used to be listeners, now you're viewers. That's pretty crazy. You said something the other day, Dan, that I haven't been able to get out of my head, and it's been freaking me out.
Oh, go on. Yeah.
And hopefully this will solve it. It's that you said that somewhere in the world there is at least one person that has heard our voices but hasn't seen us and has some, like, hideous image in their head of what we look like.
You've added hideous.
It's hideous for me because I feel like I know what they think I look like, and it's probably like a weasel.
Yeah.
Now it's being confirmed.
Yeah. It's not. I imagine. Well, I mean, I guess when it's me doing that action, I invariably make people more attractive than they end up being in reality.
Oh God, is that good? Is that better or worse? I don't know. Now they're seeing us and they're like,
well, yeah, maybe. I suppose. But also, like, I like to imagine they don't have hideous ideas.
Yeah, you never know.
Let us know. Do we have hideous voices?
Yeah,
I don't want to know if I have a hideous face. All right.
I already know about my voice.
I don't think I can take that.
Here's the thing. I've always known that my voice is awful and it sounds like a weasel and that I perhaps look like a weasel. Editing podcast episodes has made me confirm that. I'm like, oh, there it is. There's my awful, hideous, grinding voice. Well, Dan, here we are. Don't know really what we're doing, but we wanted to do something for YouTube,
yes.
I think. What's up, YouTube? Go ahead and rate 5 stars, please.
We had to put it in. Yeah.
It's your boy. So, we don't really know what we're doing here, but I think what we're planning on doing is things that maybe we couldn't turn into full episodes, things that we couldn't really expand on in the podcast, actual episodes, that we kind of wanted to go over and talk. So ostensibly, we've both bought 2 things that we want to talk about a little bit, and see if we can do that. So... we'll see. It's kind of just 2 guys on a couch, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just 2 boys on a couch.
It's the things that don't become full episodes, or the things that don't necessarily fit in with the. I mean, not that we have a standard format for what an episode is, but things that might fall outside of that purview, things that might conflict with our state of name on the podcast of never covering current events, might become. Maybe we'll cover some current-ish events. Things
that we can't find reading for, perhaps, even.
Yeah. But those occasions that we want to just speculate wildly.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. This was a faff and a half to get set up, so I don't know how often we're actually going to be doing this, but we'll do it now. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Dan, can I introduce my topic?
Please. Let's not formalize this too much because it's going to make me anxious the way. Okay. Good. What do you want to talk to us about, Jack?
Jack, please. At least we're not live streaming it. That'd be horrifying.
Yes.
Seeing the comments. Yeah. Wow, Jack is just as weird looking and weasel-esque as I thought he would be from his voice. Dan, I wanted to talk about sports. And
all listener engagement is good, Jack.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Like I said, rate 5 stars.
Sports.
We talked about this, I think, a little bit on, was it the last Fundamental Principles episode, or was an episode? I forget exactly.
We may have talked about it on mic. We've certainly had a lot of conversations off mic.
Off mic, yes. Yeah.
Jack likes to bring it up.
I love to bring it up. I bought down my physical copy of Fundamental Principles, but I forget where I put it, just to have it be like a centerpiece, because that's kind of central to the discussion I want to have. We've been talking about a version of communism, Dan, and of socialism in those last few episodes. It's very specific, and it's one that... takes a bit of wrapping your head around, I think. And I've been kind of wondering how sports fits into all of that. We talked a long time ago in one of our Ralph Miliband episodes about sports, because he was kind of saying that like Marxist academics can kind of be pricks when it comes to sports. But this is a bit more practical. I want to talk about how sports would work in a true communist or socialist society. And what I mean by that is one where we abolish wages, get rid of money, get rid of all of that. How then can you have competitive sports, right? Because obviously this isn't really something that gets talked about. I think in terms of like paying these people, it would probably just be like a general social work if we're using the vocabulary from Fundamental Principles. But I'm interested to know how the actual like trading of players and like creating of teams would work. I've got a few ideas, but if we take the first thing, which is just getting rid of wages and getting rid of money, how do you... And we can like still think of sports leagues as taking the current form that they have now under capitalism. It's like, how would you arbitrarily define what a player's worth, right? I think that's like my first thing. And I think I'm probably taking something for granted in that the sports leagues would look similar. But it's like, let's say you have like a communist baseball league or whatever. It's like, okay, you know, like Juan Soto is worth like 100 million, you know, blank monopoly money things. Who decides that? How does it work? The book would probably say the general counsel decides it, but you know, what are you going to do? I feel like, does that seem like a good way of sorting things out, arbitrarily designing things like that? I feel like no.
Correct me if I'm wrong, from what little I know about baseball, there's a huge amount of focus put on stats.
Yes. Yes.
Could you use some kind of statistical formulation to work out which are the best players? And the general counsel, for one, the general baseballing council could
the sabermetrics council. Yeah.
Could determine what every player's worth was in terms of the contribution that they might hypothetically make to a team in a season.
So yeah, that's one way you could do it. It's definitely like, but the thing is, it's so variable, right? It's like a player could be really good. Like, you're predicting things that can't be predicted.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what you're doing right now with normal wages.
Yeah.
You're doing the same thing. A player could get a huge paycheck and then suck, or...
But that's a fundamental element of sports, or the building of a sports team, and the arc of a team's play over a season is which players... I mean, which players stay healthy, right?
Yeah.
Like, or like, who underperforms, who wildly overperforms. Like,
yeah.
You've got a whole collection of rookies, and you really don't know how they're going to transition from like minor league to major league or college league to professional league kind of thing. That's almost a part of the enjoyment of sport, and it's also part of the calculation that's made by currently management. I don't know. That's another question: how you would administer a sports team.
I think.
But I mean, you could just.
Yeah. Oh, I think the thing is it just would seem too arbitrary, and somebody would have to decide it, as opposed to like the market or whatever deciding it, and like players' unions like kind of trying to like do their best to set prices. I think this leads me to my next point, Dan, is that I don't think that would work, and I think that sports leagues would have to take a completely different form. I've talked about this a bit before. I think sports leagues would completely change, and I think for the better. So stay with me. I think that they would be a lot more regionalized. I think it would be like Canterbury has its sports team, and then they go on to play, that's just like everyone from Canterbury or whatever. Like, you decide on rules, like who can play on the team, and like the best players maybe get like, what do you call it with football, where it's like you get moved up and moved down?
Promoted?
Yeah, promoted or like
Regulated.
demoted. Yeah, regulated. Yeah.
Regulated? No.
Something like that. Deregulated. That's what we're
Relegate.
Relegate, yeah. And then, like, maybe that team goes on to play, like, for Kent, and then maybe that's, like, Kent's team, and then maybe you take, like, a bunch of different players. I think that it would just have to be a lot more organic like that. Because that way you kind of get around having to, like, arbitrarily decide wages. It's just, like, the best players. Presumably, maybe you wouldn't have, like, coaches or something. Well, you'd have a coach, but maybe not one person deciding, like, get your ass back down to, like, AAA or whatever like that. It would just be everybody deciding who's best. And I think that would be more fun, but you'd also, I don't know, then you'd also get into like a national question of like, where do these boundaries stop? Why are you arbitrarily deciding like, the Kent team or whatever? So I don't know. I just think it would be a lot more regional and maybe like a mini Olympics or something like that.
Yeah, maybe it's not arbitrary, maybe it's organic.
Organic. If you're east of the River Stour or whatever, then, that's one team. I don't know. Yeah. I just think it's an interesting thing to think about, is something that we have in our everyday lives that would probably be completely changed, and how we could change it for the better. Because there's nothing to say that we would need to keep all of those capitalist structures, and we all complain about owners, and it all sucks, and they, so many teams don't care about winning. At least I'm talking about baseball right now. Like, this is a way to get around that, and you wouldn't need to keep the like monopoly money-esque thing of trying to assign players value without money. I think it would just be a lot more organic. And I think that would be better. Yeah,
I haven't thought about it, but I'm extrapolating from what you just said now. It sounds like a sort of use value, exchange value thing going on.
Interesting.
Whereby, presumably, some sports teams obviously can't win, can't be championship teams, or can't be playoff teams, but have the monopoly on a sports team in a certain region kind of thing. They have a fan base. They're guaranteed a certain amount of television or broadcast revenue of some sort, and so they're happy taking their cut of the profits of baseball,
exactly,
without actually fully facilitating the desires of the supporters by actually aiming to win, hypothetically.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that the wants and the needs of the supporters would be. Well, this is the question, right? The wants and the needs of the supporters are so often overlooked. I mean, this is the big thing that happens, that's expressed in all sports leagues or all supporter engagement with sport. I mean, it's massive in the Premier League in the UK, like the question of ownership and sort of people being priced out of the experience of supporting their team or what have you. It's easy to imagine that under communism the sports would be much better attuned to the enjoyment of the people who watch them.
Imagine that. This has been put very well by another podcast, who they don't need a shout out, obviously, they're much bigger, Effectively Wild, a great baseball podcast. But they basically made the point of this: we're kind of living in the age of extremes when it comes to sports, because it's like teams are either completely tanking and they don't care about their supporters at all because they'll continue to make money and they'll just do a rebuild in like 5 years or whatever, build up their farm system. And then there are teams like the Dodgers who just blast past the salary cap and are able to just kind of do whatever they want. So that's what we're trying to get rid of. We don't like that.
There's an extent to which something that I've become to appreciate about sports, and particularly about American sports, with the salary cap process, with the drafting process, is the idea that you sort of build a sporting legacy. That you build up a team over a certain period of time, and then that team is potentially dominant for a certain number of years, and then that sort of system falls apart because it loses certain players or certain coaches, or some other team sort of finds a workaround to beat them, kind of thing. Is that, do you recognise that as something that's positive about sport, something that needs to be found? We need to find ways to continue and to emulate.
I think it would, but I think it would be in a different system. It's not because like they run out of like players in their system and they're trading, and they have one player that's making like $30 million a year, and then one player is making like X, but they're like really good or whatever. I think that would just be, again, organic in the system that we've kind of described of like, yeah, you're going to have some people that are better at sports some years in your town or whatever, and other times you won't. And so it'll, at least in that sense, be a bit more organic. But yeah, the excitement and like the supporting thing, I feel like a lot of lefties can kind of like, not cringe, but try to like poo-poo. Like people, we talked about this with like the England football, right? Where people were like, oh, I'm not going to root for England because that's a nationalist thing. And it's like, it's sports, come on, it's fun. We like sports, folks. And I think that that's kind of what we're trying to keep. Like, sports are cool, and it's really cool to like see really athletic people doing insane feats. And so that's why I think we shouldn't get rid of sports.
Yeah. I mean, something you get in British sport, in football in particular, is that teams will have like youth teams. They'll also have like youth training programs.
Interesting. Yeah.
And sort of like, well, I can't think quite what the right word is now, but they will find local talent at an early age and bring them into their system and start bringing them up, which is something you don't get so much in American sport, I imagine. But like, it's something that you might see transposed into American sport, or you might see emphasised more heavily in British sport, in football in particular, if sports became much more regional. Like, teams would be building up their regional pool of, or their municipal pool of talent, I suppose.
Interesting.
Might even be that you would find that people with talent who are currently potentially excluded for one reason or another from being able to play professional sport in some way, like it's much more equality of opportunity.
100%. And also just like, sports are cool, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, we can't have this like rabid football supporter base or whatever, but like, it's fun. Sports are fun. Keep them. That's what I say.
Yeah.
All right.
I've not been to watch the sports game in a long time, but
it's
there's
so much
a lot
fun.
of joy.
It's so much fun.
And there's a lot of collectivity.
Especially like you go to Dodger.
Solidarity.
Exactly. You go to Dodger Stadium, and it's like, it's not just one type of people there. It's like you have like every type of person from LA is all there, and they're all rooting for people, and it's like, it rocks. It's so cool. It's really, really cool. That's about what I wanted to say.
Nice.
Sports, just a quick thing to keep it in mind because it's fun and it brings a lot of, as you say, solidarity to people. I'm gonna check that we're still recording. All right, here we go.
The mic has mysteriously moved.
The mic has moved. Jack has slightly shifted. Put all this away.
Big jump cut.
Big jump cut. Dan. What have you bought for us today?
Well, I don't know whether I have anything as concise to talk about as you did. Sometimes on the podcast, I have opportunity to make an effort to expound upon my interest in, I don't know, space science, futurism, sci-fi.
Your Elon Musk
My
fandom.
Elon Musk fandom, quite. And I'm not sure, to some extent, what I want to do is just raise that as a stated interest.
All right.
And maybe explore some of the questions of that. One of the things we could do is be like, we've done what would sports be in communism, what would space exploration be under communism, what would it mean? The other thing that I thought I'd answer very quickly is in our last episode, we asked ourselves the question, or you asked me the question, is asteroid mining actually a thing?
Here we go.
And I was like, well, you better ask Aaron Bastani. I almost said Elon Musk. Better ask Aaron Bastani.
All right.
So I did ask Aaron.
We got him on the
Aaron
phone.
Bastani. I read the relevant chapter from his book.
Oh, should we get the book out?
Well, I'm
Just to show
not
it.
planning to...
There it is, folks. You're welcome, Aaron. Please send our check in the mail.
A plug. I don't know whether...
Oh, no.
So I guess I'm plugging fully automated luxury communism, Aaron Bastani. I guess the general thesis of his book is that there are a great number of technologies that are either expanding exponentially or pseudo-exponentially.
Interesting.
So we talk about like computing power and Moore's law being something that's actually almost an exponential expansion curve in terms of its growth and capacity.
Like data processing?
Yes.
Like computer power, I
Yeah,
guess,
computer power and processing power. Whatever it is, like doubles every 18 months or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's a trend that's been continuing for since Moore's law was instituted as a law. And he covers a whole series of other technologies that are sort of not necessarily exponential in their growth, but like almost exponential or
Interesting.
have the potential to be exponential. The one that he focuses on a lot is renewable energies, particularly the growth in the ease of production of solar panels.
Okay.
And the possibility of solar panels to take over, or to cover some of the large gap in our future energy needs, should we successfully sever our dependence on fossil fuels. And one of the reasons why asteroid mining is relevant to this is whether we have the capacity to meet the needs for the production process of the required number of solar panels, predicated on terrestrial-based supply of rare earth metals and other component parts.
Does he answer the question?
Well, I think he comes down on the idea that yes, asteroid mining is quite likely to happen. But what I'm trying to set up is the idea that it's a very kind of like, it's a book predicated very much on the possibilities of technologies. And it's one of the reasons why it's sort of relevant to the question of futurism, I suppose. Like, in a lot of I mean, it's almost natural to the topic of futurism, but particularly in a lot of like futurist or space science orientated YouTube in particular, I always feel like there's a lot of base level assumption that certain technologies will almost just come about.
Sure. Yeah.
And it makes sense, right? Because futurism is about, well, maybe it oughtn't be simply about the technological possibilities, but the social and the social aspects of production. Maybe that's something that's missing from a lot of these sort of like questions of futurism, for want of a better word, is like the social system that underlays the production of technologies.
Yeah, it is interesting. And we were talking about this the other day about like, I forget exactly where I heard it. I feel like someone smarter than me said it, but about the possibility of like, is it a necessity to like socialize production in such a way, basically get communism to do all of the cool space stuff? Like, is it even possible under capitalism? And I realized I said something in the last episode about like, it was kind of like, I feel like asteroid mining probably isn't possible, but it's also like, that isn't like a one-to-one connection in terms of like the energy that goes in and energy goes out, because presumably you're getting different materials from the asteroid than you're using to get there, and so if you have a surplus of one, it wouldn't really matter. I don't know, as a metabolic rift thing. But anyway, the idea of like, are these things only possible under developed enough productive apparatus that you could get under communism, I think is really interesting, and like kind of changes the way we think about why we do space travel now, or even just like why we even go to the moon or send billionaires to space. Like, what's the point? Like, what would the point be for like a communist society? Like, what could we get? And if you're saying like, you know, like, yeah, well, asteroid mining could do the thing, or like we could potentially like get more resources or do something like that, and then even think about like exploration. It's awesome.
Well, this is the problem, right? It's so, to a certain mind or to a person educated on a certain set of like science fiction tropes or narratives, it is incredibly thrilling as a possibility.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah.
And I've always been very keen to, maybe not like vocally push back, but in my mind, suspicious of like, there's so many other problems to solve first, and so we should fix those problems, which is something that I do agree with. One of the things that did occur to me was the question of monopoly in terms of space exploration.
Sure.
One of the big questions around asteroid mining is and the way it's the thing that Bastani ends his chapter on asteroid mining on, is the question of what bringing back, and supposing you could move a sufficiently large and rich in resources asteroid into a near Earth orbit that you could successfully strip it of all of the useful minerals, and like what would that do to the cost of that mineral or the cost of those resources? And I think like conventional understanding of economics would say that it would just tank the price of something. If you massively increase the supply, you would just tank the price of it. One of the things that Bastani says that was quite interesting is that capitalism is very poor at dealing with abundance.
Interesting. Yeah,
which
sure.
I really thought about.
Wow.
I was thinking about, it made me think in some terms about capitalism's desperate desire to try and make scarcity out of abundance, and how we might get to the point where like the ways in which we're charged for certain natural resources like water and the like. And I mean, God forbid if we ever end up being charged for space and air, and I mean like literal space in the world kind of thing, and air. And,
God.
I don't know.
Well, that's fascinating.
But what would happen in all likelihood is that the company that managed to monopolize or gain access to these resources would just sort of drip feed them into the supply chain, such that they could undermine the terrestrial supply to the point where they could price everybody else out of the market, but without actually tanking the market entirely, kind of thing. If you were a monopoly owner of something, you could just control the supply of it, kind of thing. And that basically it's just the tech model, right? It's like you provide your service at a loss until you have successfully monopolized music streaming or video streaming, or I don't know, like
podcasting,
fast food delivery, or and then you can set the agenda as you like. You can set the pricing structure as you like.
The system works.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. So I was thinking that, it's an example of capitalism not dealing very well with monopoly, or monopoly falling outside of the textbook definition of why capitalism functions ostensibly well. I mean, obviously I don't endorse that. But a social monopoly, a collective monopoly, if it was something that was orchestrated by self-conscious human beings under a communist system, that we would go out and get this resource and bring it back, you were in a position to benefit so much. Well, I mean, it's the same under all circumstances. The reason why communism would benefit us more than capitalism is that we can actually directly, or as directly as possible, meet human need rather than the needs of profit seekers. And I was thinking about this in terms of the system that's as described in the fundamental principles of communist production and distribution, in that, like, it almost feels to me, but it would require some more thinking about, I suppose, that system provides us the best way to basically just sort of feed that kind of resource into the productive system, kind of thing. Like, if everything in the productive, if every resource in the economic system is just owned by the collectivity, and every person who's working on it at any given time, or every industry that's working on it at any given time is just a custodian of something, it makes me wonder whether those resources that come from a hypothetically mined asteroid just become sort of like tokens of representative of a certain amount of labor hours that become the material inputs to production in a way which would run much more smoothly and be far more transparent. So I suppose what I'm saying is actually you can use that hypothetical example to expound the advantages of the model as described by the group of international commonists, I suppose.
That's fascinating. Two things. One, I'd never really thought of like specifically about capitalism as being just horrible to deal with abundance. I mean, obviously you see like last year there was the classic like potato farmers in Idaho didn't know what to do with all their potatoes, so they buried all of them and destroyed them. It was like, oh, sick. Awesome, great, thanks guys.
It's an actual panic.
Yeah, exactly. And then just the comparison of like when you switch the focus from like exchange value to use values of like, wow, abundance is actually like the good thing now, and we can actually like put all this to use. But leads me to my second question. This is so stupid. What are asteroids made out of? Like, what is the specific resources? Like you mentioned silicon. Like, is that a thing? Or can they just be made of anything? Like I was just like, oh, it's just like iron or something. Like
I think a lot, I mean, even I think the iron
would be useful.
Obviously they have different compositions, and I think they're actually classified based on their various compositions. So there is a classification scale for asteroids, which I'm not
at liberty
not able to divulge. And I think it's on a sliding scale from more commonly available metals like iron, you say, all the way up to like...
There's like a platinum one.
Yeah, well, some of them have very high compositions of gold and other rare earth metals. I don't know what you'd... I don't even know what metals fall under the headline rare earth metals.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Wow, that's crazy. All right.
But
there might be one made of cheese.
There is an asteroid, the name of which I forget, which Bastani references in his book, suggesting that it's a rather large one, but its composition has been valued, and I think he says $10,000 quadrillion.
Oh my god! All right.
I think it's relatively inaccessible. I think it's a main asteroid belt asteroid, and it would be quite hard to. I mean, it's massive, right? So even if you wanted to move it to somewhere where it was close to mineable,
well,
I mean, I guess at this point it's worth saying just how far away these technologies are, right?
We landed on an asteroid recently, right?
Yeah, it's been done several times actually. Yeah, the Chinese have done it a couple of times. They had two probes, Hayabusa 1 and 2, I think, that both managed to land on asteroids.
Did they bring them back?
And I think they both were sample return missions.
One of them
returns.
Cool.
One of them the second one landed in 2018, I think, and returned some material in 2020. I think the Americans are also planning one to land on the asteroid Bennu, I think, in a few years' time, and the Chinese are up to it. So at the same time, it's still one of those things which is being pioneered by state space agencies, and it's once again another example of state agencies pioneering in a way which then, like you collectivize the cost prohibitive portion of the development of a technology, and then you like privatize the gains and the profits from it's becoming more universal.
It's a bummer, right? That space and everything that goes along with it, like we're in a time now where it's just kind of frustrating because like, man, it must have been so cool hanging out in the 60s and like, damn, we're on the moon. That's pretty cool. That must have been really, really neat. And now we're just at a time where it's just frustrating. It's sick. Jeff Bezos didn't actually go to space. Not that I know anything about space, but I feel like he didn't actually go to space. And that's all we get.
It's a lie, folks. Just made
up. It's a lie. They faked it all. Moon rovers, or not the moon rovers, the Mars rovers are pretty cool now. Big, too. Didn't realize how big those things were. Good stuff.
I'm excited. The one last tidbit of information coming from Aaron Bastani's book. He references two companies in particular who are sort of like ostensibly pioneering in at least the aspiration to asteroid mine. At the time when he's writing the book, they're both just faffing about, working on like building small probes and finding other ways to actually forge a space in the space industry that's vaguely profitable. Two of them he references Deep Space Industries and Planetary Resources. Deep Space Industries still exists. Planetary Resources in 2018 was bought by the company that's behind Ethereum blockchain.
Oh, I knew it was going to be bad. I didn't think it was going to be that bad. Oh my god.
And I think that, I don't quite know why, but they basically took all of the software and then the hardware stuff and made it available on their blockchain.
I have no idea what that means.
I mean, I basically referenced this story just to get the laugh for the blockchain.
Yeah, okay.
But I guess in the future, might have to actually educate ourselves on what these things mean.
The blockchain, the communist blockchain.
But it was what was interesting to me and what was frustrating to me at the same time was like, maybe this speaks to the problem of like both futurism, but also the degree of overlap between your sort of people who call Elon,
yeah,
people, and the degree of overlap between them and people who extol the virtues of both blockchain technology and also like cryptocurrency technology.
Yeah.
And also like tech in general is their sort of like pseudo social or their use of rhetoric which speaks to a social purpose, a social mission behind what they do.
Yeah.
Which obviously disguises from their profit seeking, but also or serves to muddy the waters or hide the distinction or hide the ultimate contradiction between the idea of like social mission and meeting social need.
Yeah.
So it was just very frustrating reading through some of the materials and some of the copy that was written to describe, I don't know, blockchain and this company and what their mission was. And also there's a quote that Bastani uses from somebody else who works at Blue Origin, who's speaking of like Blue Origin's desire to facilitate a future whereby like I think their mission eventually is to have hundreds of thousands of people working and living in space kind of thing, and they described it as just like a social mission, as a way to advance humanity, disguising entirely what their ultimate aim is. It has to be profitable to some extent.
Yeah.
Although maybe, I mean, we were talking about this yesterday, it still raises a question for me, and we talked about it on the podcast briefly the other day, like, what are Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos actually up to?
Yeah.
I still, to some extent, imagine that maybe because they are so wildly wealthy, like, they actually, to some extent, do believe in their own bullshit.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's problematic or whether it's maybe it's really advantageous to this disguise that they're trying to erect around these companies if the CEOs at least behave in a way which is behave in a believable way, I suppose, when it comes to perpetuating this myth that they're just in it to do social good.
Jeff Bezos is a sicko, dude. It's got to do something to you, I think, to just go, to be looking at your books one day and be like, damn, I could afford to go to space.
Yeah.
Whatever their ultimate aims are, it does seem like maybe there's some kind of like renewed interest in space and getting people to space. And now that NASA's basically just like hanging out, not doing much, they go, okay, well, can probably make some money off of this. That definitely seems to be the case with SpaceX, obviously, right? Because that's what they've been doing and getting contracts and stuff. Bezos, who knows? Branson, no idea. I mean, Branson, that guy's a freak.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very odd.
Yeah.
It's a bummer.
Yeah. I'll end on a very short point. Space will kill you. Space will kill us. We have no way to keep it. Our capacity to keep human beings alive in space at the moment is like wafer thin.
Really?
Yeah, in terms of like we can survive in low Earth orbit because human beings are still protected by like the magnetosphere of the planet, right? Protected from radiation, but the experience of both radiation and low or microgravity. Yeah, it's just not good for the human body. Yeah.
I don't like that. I don't like that. What's the movie? Is it Matt Damon where he goes to Mars and they just grows potatoes?
Yeah.
If they need someone to do that, I'm on it. I can grow potatoes on Mars. I can do that. I'll survive solely on potatoes. All right.
No, there's probably no blight on Mars.
Yeah, well, not until I show up. It's like on my clothes or something. I'm like, no, I came so far away. All All right, well that's good. Space, sports, very exciting.
Yeah.
A lot to ponder. Maybe we should talk about a bit about this book. I'm interested in it. And just the idea of futurism too, as it relates to socialism, because like so many people when they hear about communism, you know, and they think about the Soviet Union and everybody wearing the same clothes, dude, and nobody had like the good things or whatever. Like, I know, it's good to make the point of like, well, look what it could do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It could bring a goddamn asteroid into low Earth orbit and kill everybody. Yeah, futurism. I like it. I'm into it.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
I think I'm good.
Yeah, I think we're good. All right, maybe we'll do another one of these. Maybe we won't. Hopefully this one goes well. Hopefully we actually wind up putting this out. I think it's been fun. I think it's been great.
Yeah, I'm very pleased.
Sitting here on the couch in front of the fireplace. This is not normally how the room is arranged. That's why it looks a little odd. There's just a fireplace there. All right. Normally...
Paul Joseph Watson map, so like...
yeah. Hopefully that can be seen. If it can't be seen, whatever. Normally...
All our YouTube credentials, TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. Like, share, subscribe. Normally we say, this has been Auxiliary Statements, but I have no idea what this is, so... I'll just say, I've been Jack. I've had a lot of fun talking sports with y'all. Dodgers are going to play tonight. They're playing Colorado. So hopefully they win, and I'll be watching it. That's about that. Dan will be.
I've been down. Yeah, we need to arrange for me to watch some baseball with you sometime.
Yes, I know.
I'm keen.
We'll do a baseball.
Also, the
episode
football
soon.
season started soon. You have no interest in watching America. I enjoy American football. Just as a signed-off confession. And it's coming up the season.
I'd like it if I had a team. The thing is, it's like LA. While I was growing up, there was no team, and now people are excited about the Rams to come back. I'm a Raiders fan through and through, so you know now that they're in Vegas, who cares? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Baseball's
It's difficult.
a good
If they just keep moving the goalposts.
Yeah, well, there you go, saying. All right, this has been fun. We'll see everybody next time, I suppose.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching.
See ya.
Close enough to say goodbye.